Can we talk for a second about firing people?
Ooh, yes. Not a great topic. I mean, it is a great topic. It's not like the fun topic, but it's an alluring topic.
It is an alluring topic. I mean, nobody wants to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
However,
no one also wants to do the firing, I will say too. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Or would you say that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think that's fair. In thinking about firing people, I know Jim Collins in his book Good to Great uses that phrase like dehiring.
Yeah.
And sometimes what people ask us about is, heaven forbid people actually get to the stage where they hold people accountable and then people don't perform. Then you have to get to this inevitable spot of letting somebody go, or to use a euphemism, like encouraging them to go or encouraging them to find their peace somewhere else, or whatever you want to say. But the bottom line is it's about firing people. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges with that? I'm wondering.
Well, I think a lot of great managers are worried that it's just, like a training issue, or that they haven't given someone enough support to succeed, like worrying that, hey, like maybe it's something I haven't done, I should give them another chance, let me coach them more to do this, and like worried that maybe it's on them and therefore they don't want to punish them for something that's really on them.
So like they don't want somebody to not be able to pay their mortgage because they failed to do their job as a manager.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I also can't think of a situation I've ever seen where someone has been unjustly fired. I haven't seen that. I'm sure somebody else has, but I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm thinking about like the first time I fired somebody, and it was like, I went into the room and I'm like, okay, so this person is going to be leaving the building in 15 minutes, because he had done something egregious. He had cheated. And then it was just a matter of having the conversation. He was like, and I was like, yeah, so there's zero tolerance for this. So that's it. I'm sure you will find a beautiful job. Carry on, bug off. And to me, it didn't bother me at all because it's not like what he was doing was questionable. But I also knew that I had done my job. And do you think I guess I'm wondering if maybe sometimes managers aren't paying attention to the right stuff.
Yeah.
And then they feel badly about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are those scenarios for sure, but I think there are also scenarios where it's like someone is still like, there's been multiple conversations about not being able to do this thing, or like not being able to perform in this way, or or something like a little more clean cut, like an attendance thing or something. Like the case you just described sounds like it was a zero tolerance for this thing. What if it's like, I've asked you to do this 5 times and this is the 5th time, and like you're like, should they not be in our team anymore? Should this be someone we dehire? Like, you've always given the advice to CEOs, to people on our team before, like, okay, this is the Jim Collins advice, which is, okay, if you're not sure whether this person should still be on the bus, should still be on our team, imagine they come to you and they say, gee, Melissa, like, I don't think this is the job for me anymore. I'm going to resign. To examine your response to that and say, would you be relieved or would you be disappointed?
Totally. I do always give that advice because it's served me really well. I mean, if somebody's unreliable or whatever, it's like, that's a deal breaker. That's a deal breaker. But if there's somebody who has, because that's what usually most people, it's not clean cut. They have like some really great qualities and then they have like this junk quality or two. And the question is, do we have an obligation to give these people jobs as well? Like, how does that work? And I think you have to think about your own organizational culture, because the thing is, if they're getting paid the same amount as somebody else, but they're not pulling the oars as hard, like everybody else is going to look at that and be like, okay, so obviously I'm killing myself to be a rock star. And it turns out you only have to do that to get a paycheck around here. And then everybody else lowers their performance. And that's, Quint Studer talks about, then he talks about the wall. And people hitting that point. And so I think you do have to ask yourself, and I know at least for me, for sometimes some of my team members have brought to me like, oh, so-and-so's, problematic, da, 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 da. And I asked myself, okay, let's see, if so-and-so were to quit or say they were going to quit, how would I feel? And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to lose that person.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose the diversity of perspective. I don't want to lose what they bring. So I better figure out how to talk to them about the fact that this is a problem.
Right.
And, I actually had a conversation yesterday with somebody for a board that I'm on, and we're about to fire someone. And I had a conversation because the meeting got scrapped, and they called me to say the meeting got scrapped. And they were like, I'm really looking forward to the next meeting. And I said, well, let me just give you a little pro tip. You may not want to look forward to the next meeting, because the next meeting, we're talking about whether or not we're going to keep you. And he was like, really? And I was like, so I haven't been the point of contact. And I was like, how did you not know this? And then I thought, that's it. Nobody wanted to be candid enough with the guy to tell him. And I said, here's the deal. You're not performing at a level that we're paying for. And apparently no one's told you that yet.
Wow.
So I'm happy to be telling you that. And I want to tell you that if you make a 180 right now, and then we do reschedule this meeting for 2 weeks, people are going to be a little suspicious that, like, why didn't you shape up before now? And I'm going to be candid and tell them that we had this little bit of a conversation, but the truth be told, that guy didn't know he was a problem. And so everybody's been hemming and hawing about how we're going to let this guy go. And like,
without talking to him?
Well, they said they've talked to him and expressed, but he didn't hear it. It was, it's that thing where people don't like to deliver bad news.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes people give that bologna sandwich of like, well, this has been really good and this was crap, but this has also been really good. And then people are like, well, okay, so is it good or is it crap? I can't tell because you're totally unclear. And so I was just super frank. I'm like, here's the conversation. Do we retain you or not? So, be thinking on that. Which I think is only fair.
Yeah.
But I was stunned at how much we've not prepared other humans for having those conversations. I was just being, in my opinion, I was being totally fair to him. Because if he would have shown up and then got like whacked in the head that like he just suddenly learned, if I were him, I would say, well, that's unjust.
Yeah. Right.
Because no one even gave me a heads up.
Right. Yeah. And it also is a service to everyone else on that team.
Yes.
To make those decisions,
yes,
and make sure that person's performing, and if they're not, to move them off the team.
Totally.
Because often people will say after a hard decision like that is made, there's so much relief everywhere. Everyone was like, oh, I'm worried because if I let them go, they're going to have more work.
Right.
And then afterwards they're like, oh my God, it's like we can breathe in here again.
Totally. Even though we may have literally more tasks to do.
Totally.
It feels better. And frankly, we're all done kicking the can down the road and we're relieved about that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think, to me, that gets to the whole thing about being really clear with people about whether they're high performers, middle performers, or low performers. I was working with an executive who will be promoted to a higher executive role. And that executive didn't realize that they were a middle performer. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because as an outsider, it was pretty clear to me. But they didn't know they were a middle performer. And they were like, how come I'm not being recognized as a superstar? And I'm like, oh, because no one's told this person what they need to do to get better.
Oh, wow.
And maybe they just didn't want to hurt his feelings. But like,
yeah,
really?
I think that should be something that comes up. I feel like that's the culture that everyone needs to adopt when they use the high, middle, low performing terminology. We always tell people to go to their performance evals and see if the performance eval matches with where we think someone is.
Totally.
And I think I did this with you on my last performance review where, I think you should ask, like, where am I right now?
Yeah.
Like, am I high? I felt like I was high. I think I said to you, I feel like I'm middle now. And to have that conversation and then trust that the person's going to give you a candid response.
Totally. I think even using the words like high, middle, low is so much better than like, people have these scales of like on a scale of 1 to 10.
Totally.
And then some people are like, well, 5 means you're doing your job well. And 7 means you're really going above and beyond. And other people are like, no, like a C in the class means I'm not that awesome and I'm shooting for an A. So we have these two different philosophies that struggle with each other. And then nobody's really candid just to say, you're a middle performer and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're a
and
high
here's what you need
yes.
to do to get to high. Like if you do
Totally.
these 3 things and nail it, I think you'll get to high. But right now you're
Totally.
here at middle.
Yeah. I think we make this stuff, we enshroud it in so much nicety to like try to make everybody feel good that it just becomes like confusing as hell for everybody.